Today, we are thrilled to introduce a guest who has been a huge expander to me throughout her incredible journey, Lucie Fink. From her early days creating fun and engaging vlogs at Refinery 29 to her very popular YouTube channels and social channels, and then into her seamless transition into motherhood and the podcast world, Lucie has built a unique and inspiring brand. Now almost a mom of two, Lucie continues to showcase her immense talent as a video creator, sharing her life with authenticity and creativity. And as someone who's due just a few days apart from her, I couldn't be more excited to dive into this conversation. Welcome, Lucie, and thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so excited. So fun fact, all three of us are pregnant. Dale, I think, is due first.
I'm due first.
Then Lucie, and then me. I'm still very early, but by the time this comes out, it will be kosher to tell everyone. But super exciting. We're all pregnant with our seconds. And, you know, Lucie, you speak very openly about all the things coming, how it was with your first. But one thing we really wanted to ask you is, how are you planning to transition from 1 to 2? Are there things that you have learned from your first one that you don't want to happen? Do you have certain boundaries you are setting? Maybe pressures you're removing from yourself? I know you talked a lot about your breastfeeding journey and how you breastfed for almost a year and it just took a lot of toll on you. Is there certain things that you're going to do differently?
Yeah, well, I've been absolutely obsessed with this 1 to 2 transition, especially as it compares to the 0 to 1. You might remember I did a whole episode of my podcast where I brought audience callers on to talk about whether they felt going from 0 to 1 or 1 to 2 was harder. And I can't stop thinking about this because as I prep, I have a really dialed in theory, I believe, that has proven correct from all the people I've spoken to, that all the people out there who seem to say that going from 0 to 1 was a breeze and it was just the easiest, most seamless transition, those are the people who tend to feel that 1 to 2 is a lot harder. Whereas the people who felt like going from 0 to 1 was emotionally tumultuous and, you know, they felt this identity loss and they felt like that was hard, they often feel like going from 1 to 2 is easier and is just a breeze compared to the first time. And so I fall more in the category of having felt the emotional turmoil of having a first, especially just around identity loss and figuring out who I am and what my life and schedule looks like. Now with a toddler and my family has moved to the suburbs, we're in a house now. Our lives are just so drastically different than they were when we were welcoming our first in New York City in an apartment. And, you know, now not only are our lives already revolving around a toddler and his schedule, as you guys both know, but I just feel such a weight has been lifted in terms of how I'm going to feel going into having this second baby and the type of heaviness that that is going to carry. I feel like the first time, every little stress and every little stage and moment felt so intense. And I know now that you get through every stage and everything passes. So the second, I feel like I'll just be able to be a little bit more present and a little bit more absorbed in the newborn bubble, knowing that I will emerge from it eventually. Whereas the first time, I wasn't so sure I was going to come out.
How does it feel to kind of go back into that newborn phase? Like I know, you know, you graduate from the bottles or you graduate from the nursing and then you're kind of, are you nervous to go back to that phase and just
and
be
the breastfeeding
on the
too.
schedule that, yeah.
Yes. I mean, when I first got pregnant with this second baby, I was trying to figure out why I didn't feel as excited to get pregnant the second time as I did the first time. Even like before I tried, I kept pushing it off. Like I thought I would probably try earlier, but we didn't start trying until our first was over 2. And I was asking myself, why am I not excited about this? And honestly, the breastfeeding and the scheduling and the pumping and the nursing was a really big contributing factor to me not being ready to go back into that again. Anyone who's done it knows just what a not only physical toll that it takes on your body. For me, it was my body's like worst health point possible. I was at my lowest weight, incredibly nutrient depleted, needed to work with a nutritionist to try to put on weight and just was like needed to overeat to sustain my body. And on top of it, schedule wise and life wise, everything was disrupted. From a work perspective, couldn't travel places, or if I did, had to bring all this equipment and really felt tied and tethered to being at home to do that job for what ended up being 9 months. And so going into the second, I was like, I just genuinely can't imagine getting back into that state, because once I stopped doing that, I felt like my life changed for the better and everything just got better. And so I did go into this second pregnancy kind of declaring, not to the internet or anything, but I declared to myself that I was actually going to do no pumping, no breastfeeding. We're doing 100% formula. And I had that in my head going into the pregnancy. Then, as the pregnancy has evolved, specifically as I have watched my body change and specifically watched my boobs change, and like I could just see my body is getting ready to do this again. I had a very healthy supply the first time, and I feel like it's coming back. Like I already noticed leakage and colostrum and whatnot. So as this started to happen, I kind of reverted and changed my mind a little, where I was like, oh, now that I'm seeing my body want to do this so badly, it now doesn't feel right to make the declaration that I'm just not going to do it at all. Of course, I have plenty of friends that choose not to do it. And it's crazy that like I look at them not doing it with no sense of judgment at all. But of course, when it comes to me, I'm like, my body wants to do this. I should do this. And so the place I'm at right now, you never know what the journey is going to be like until it's here. The place I'm at now is, if I had to outline the perfect scenario of what I think I'm going to do, I'm calling it kind of like breastfeeding light, where I do want to breastfeed. I want to give her some breast milk. She's also, like with Dale, she's coming in September, which is a time when my son's going to be going back to school. And like, if his year is anything like it was last year, we were all sick for months and months. So I know even just a little breast milk will be helpful for her in terms of immunity. So I do want to breastfeed a little bit, but I want to do it very differently from how I did it the first time, in that I do not want to pump between feeds to just increase the supply. We have a night nurse who's going to be with us in those early weeks, and I want to try to not pump overnight while the baby's with her. I think I want to just try to get my body to not make milk at those hours of the day if possible. And, if there's ever a time when she seems hungry and I don't have any more milk, formula. That's what she'll get at those times. So that's kind of my approach right now. But as we all know, who knows? Maybe she'll have a tongue tie and can't do it at all. Or maybe she'll have another health thing that makes me want to get an oversupply and give her ounces and ounces of milk. So who knows?
I love that you're so open about this. And honestly, I think about this often too, because I had a similar experience. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to breastfeed, and I did, but it was like too much. And I was like trying to count all the ounces and have a freezer stash and just constant pressure. And it really took a toll on my mental health. And this summer I spent in Paris, and I spoke to a lot of like French girls about breastfeeding, and a lot of them, probably 90% of them, did not breastfeed. And I found it really interesting. And I kept asking, why is this a societal thing and whatnot? And for them, it's mental health based a lot of the time. It's like, I want to get my life back on. I want to start like getting my body back. I want to have a schedule. I want to work. And this is just not going to work. And it's not about like not taking care of their baby. It's more of like, in order to be the best mom for my child, I have to take care of myself, which I really love. Yes. And I found really refreshing.
100%. And I like will fight to the death for anyone who is forcing people to feel like they need to breastfeed. I just have so many friends that from the get-go decided not to do it. And I think it's amazing. I also, being a twin and being second children in our family, like I was primarily a formula fed baby. And especially these days, there are so many amazing brands of formula that are organic or don't have, fillers or gums or whatever. And I just think there's so many great options, and we all need to just agree that fed is best.
100%. And did you find when you were breastfeeding first time around and you were going through these issues that you were feeling depleted and you were losing too much weight, was there a long gap between you decided, okay, enough is enough? Or was there like a guilt that was holding you back? Was there a part of you that was like, no, I still have to do this, and pressured yourself? Or was it kind of like, okay, it's time. Once you noticed you were depleted, you were like, it's time to be done?
Once I noticed I was depleted was when I definitely started the slowing down process. When I say I went to 9 months, by the end of those 9 months, it was like once in the morning and once at night. And there was no overnight wakes. I was not doing it during all hours of the workday. I think around 3 months, which is when we first got a nanny, and she ended up being with him during his, I think it was like the 11 a.m. and the 3 p.m. feed times. I dropped those 2 times and initially switched to pumping during those times. But then maybe around 6 months, I cut those pumps. So I was really just breastfeeding like once in the morning and once at night by 9 months. And I want to say it was less societal. I mean, it definitely wasn't anyone around me, anyone in my family giving me pressure or friends or anything like that. I think it was more so coming from me simultaneously liking the experience. And so wanting to hold on to it, but knowing it just wasn't the best thing for me or even for him at that time. Once he got teeth, oh gosh, like I was getting bitten and I just kept pulling it out of his mouth. And I was like, you would be happier if you just got a steady stream from a bottle at this point.
Right.
So it wasn't really external pressure. It was more just me trying to string it along as long as I could.
Yeah. How about with boundaries? Is there any new boundaries that you feel like you're going to put into place with baby number 2? Because I remember in one of your podcasts, you mentioned with baby number 1, you had kind of strict boundaries with your parents and your in-laws about making sure that they're grandparents and not overstepping in the kind of parenting realm. But is there any kind of new ones that you want to put into place?
In terms of that specific topic, both my parents and Michael's parents have at this point proven to us that they are kind of following our wishes and, involved with Milo's life very much like grandparents. If anything, I feel like not that my boundaries are going to be lowered for baby 2. Like we still have our family boundaries. I think people still respect that we do like being together as a core unit, soon to be of 4. And we do want to have plenty of weekends in a month, for example, when we don't have people coming over and visiting and we're just spending time with our family at home in our town, getting to know our new town. But if anything, I would say that what's changing this time is that I'm just going to be a little bit more open from the get-go to like accepting that help and that involvement. Whereas the first time, at least those first few months, Michael and I were just this like closed circuit where we didn't want too many people coming over. If they would offer to take him to sleep over, we were like, no, we're sleep training him. We're doing this. These are our schedules. It's going to go this way. And with the second baby, just everything feels like looser, where if someone came over and was like, do you guys want to go for dinner? We'll watch her. Like, yes, we do want to go to dinner. We will leave. And we didn't do that with the first. So I actually think it's like looser boundaries going into baby number 2.
Where do you think that comes from, like not being able to ask for help in the beginning? Because I experienced that too, and I know Dale too, and I think so many of our friends do. I don't know if that's like comes along with being a woman and just like wanting to kind of do it on your own, but I think it's a common theme.
I think for us, it was less about not being able to relinquish the control or not being able to ask for help. And it was more that Michael and I are both so enmeshed with our unique families and our parents. I've talked about before on my social media how we both, in some weird ways, even though we're like fully functioning adults, pay for our own lives, do everything ourselves, we're so close with our parents and everyone's so nearby physically that I still feel like a kid in a lot of ways. And I still feel like if I need something and I don't know how to do it, whether it's like something with a passport or some doctor appointment thing, I will call my parents. And I'm 32. And so I think that my fear with having Milo was that we were going to have this baby who then, because both sets of our parents are so like spry and involved and here and present, that they were just going to kind of take over parenting and jump right back into being the ones to like, you need to book this class for him, or, it's really important that you take him to this pediatrician appointment and he needs these shots. And Michael and I just wanted to figure that out on our own. So those boundaries, it was more like, I don't want to feel like a child. I want to feel like I'm the parent of this child and you guys are just coming over to play as grandparents. But yeah, a lot of people do feel like it's hard to ask for help. And I did have some glimpses of that. Like there were some moments for us where it's not that it was hard to ask for help, but it's that we have a very specific vision of how we want to parent. And especially in modern days, things have changed so much from when both sets of our parents were parents.
Mm-hmm.
And even to this day, like I follow all these accounts on social media that tell you things to say, things not to say when it comes to food or, I don't know, behavior scripts that you should say. And I work really hard to use that language. And then when I'm around grandparents, they just kind of say the old school way. And you
right,
have
like no
to
dessert.
really
if you
pick
don't,
your battles.
If you don't finish
Eat your
your meal,
greens.
you don't get dessert, and then you don't get to watch TV. And it's like, no, we don't do that with food.
I know. It's like we're trying to put the Oreo. I don't know. I actually don't do this, but like I know some people try to put the cookie like on the dinner plate as just part of the plate and not glorify it as once you
Right.
finish everything else, you can get this. We don't go that far with some of these things, but I do try to not say the things like, you have to eat this if you want to get that.
Right.
And those words just fly out of every grandparent's mouth.
100%. It's so
And
true.
you gotta, I don't know. I've actually listened. I listened to, I think it was a Dr. Becky podcast
Mm.
that really helped me with this, where she basically was saying when that happens, because I found myself in the very beginning, especially with my parents, I'm a little better about it with Michael's parents because it's like not my parents, but with my parents, I would jump on them in the moment and say something like, no, we don't say that. Or, don't say that to him. That's not the right thing to say. And I would try to teach them in the moment. And Dr. Becky did this great podcast about how actually what's better for you and your like sanity and also the kid is to just like let everyone be how they are when you're with everyone in person. And then after the fact, when you're with your kid alone, obviously this works better when they're a little older, but once you're with your kid alone, you can then say, did you hear how grandma said this? Well, actually, that's how some people think, but that's not how we do it in this, in this family. We don't believe that. So, and it's basically like when you bring it up like that, it's like, A, you're not attacking the grandparent in front of the child. The child doesn't sense any tension. And B, then they actually have a thoughtful learning moment out of it instead of just hearing people fight.
I love that. And especially when you bring it up again and you share that it's kind of your family's rules and they can kind of see, okay, what happens inside my house? Because a lot of the time you worry, like, what if they learn this on social media or they hear this at school? But when you kind of set the tone for what goes on in your family, I think that could really positively, impact them more. And they can see the distinction. Because it's so hard to control the outside world and we can only do so much. Like the grandparent is just one aspect, but they're going to go on social media and see so many other things. So that's such a great way to put it. I'm going to implement that. And
that's a good one,
yeah,
right? I know, I like that one.
It is a good one. And when you were talking about your episode from the 0 to 1 to 1 to 2, you mentioned that you fell more in the identity. Things shifted for you. So we'd love to hear how your identity has changed if you went through your identity crisis. We talk a lot about that. Once you kind of are out of the newborn bubble, how it was like going back to work. I know you obviously run your own business and how that all kind of felt for you and changed for you.
This whole part of my existence was a real shock to me because I've always wanted to have kids. I know some people, it's like an accident that they get pregnant or they didn't really know and then they decided to and then feel this identity crisis. Whereas I have gone my whole life knowing I wanted to be a mom. I've also been with my husband. We were together for 10 years before we even had Milo. So it was like this long time leading up. And by the time we got pregnant, it was just, we were both as ready as you could possibly be emotionally. Yet once we came home from the hospital. So it wasn't in the hospital. The hospital was actually pretty blissful and, you're just in this different environment. It feels wacky, but fun. And then we got home and it was also November. So it was a very bleak time of the year, but we got home and all of a sudden the two of us were just like feeling this heaviness and this darkness about the experience. We didn't really know why, but it was the time of year when the sun would start to set really early, 4 p.m. It was pitch dark outside. And we would just turn to each other and, he'd be taking a nap or sleeping at that point, and we would just both start crying. Like, I think he was feeling the postpartum hormones right there with me. We're both crying. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm crying. I want this. I wanted and I want this now, but for some reason, this experience is not as blissful as I thought it was going to be. And it's almost like, the highs are way higher than you think, but the lows are way lower. And I remember specifically, like 2 days before I had given birth, I was just like doing work at my counter in the city, and a friend texted me, and I ran out to go to a coffee shop, and I was just free. And then as soon as I came home with this baby, it was like, boom, life is different. You can't go out to a coffee shop because now you're on a pumping schedule, nor do I want to go out to a coffee shop because I don't want to leave him in any hour of the day. And it's also the weather sucks. It was another strain of COVID came around. So now we're like terrified to let anyone in our house. And we're just like, why is this dark? My whole mindset of having a baby was going to be, in my head, I just saw only the positive, joyful moments that you witness when you're like with a friend that has a baby and you're having the best time of your life and then they go home. I thought that was going to be the 24/7 environment, but it was not. And our whole apartment just all of a sudden felt different. It went from this apartment that we lived in, the two of us, that felt like our space and our home, to just like every room felt different. The kitchen all of a sudden became this like pumping zone, bottle zone. The living room had all these new utensils and accessories out. The nursery became like a shit show of just stuff thrown everywhere. And my bedroom became like the pumping zone with all my supplies. And it was just like, everything is weird. And I remember we were just so confused why we felt that way. And I have to say, like, the fog did lift after probably 3 months. Once we really got into more of a rhythm, 3 months was when we got a nanny. We both like went back to our works more full time. I actually didn't go full time at first. So we only had a nanny 3 days a week. So I was doing like a 3-day work schedule at that time. But once that happened, it was really just a big shift in terms of getting more comfortable with the schedule. As I said, I was like dropping some nursing sessions and pumping sessions here and there. And just slowly but surely, things kind of crept back to a new normal. But I remember in those early days, like one of the things I was so sad about was just the loss of my life as I knew it. And I had posted on social media kind of being open about how I was sad about this. And I got so many DMs from people saying, what a lot of people don't tell you is that when you have a baby, like the old you dies and you have to grieve the loss of you. And I just was reading, like, I don't know if people were trying to make me feel better, but I was reading these DMs being like, this is devastating. I remember I called my friend and I was like, I don't want to die. I was like, I love my life. Why does something have to die? Like, why can't this just be a new addition to life? And I don't know, everyone uses different terminology, but that death and grieving situation made me feel really sad in the moment. But it is kind of like, now that I think about it, is kind of like that, where you don't have to be quite as dramatic as to use the word death, but it's like your life is going to not be the way that it was before you have a baby. And then now, being 2+ years in, 2.5 years in, I would say like my whole setup in my life and our schedule and my whole situation is very different. But my actual life and the way I feel as Lucie and as a business owner and as a person with my friends and my relationships, like that feels more normal. And that has kind of gone back to normal.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's so true. And it's just another example of that multiple emotions can exist at once. You can be sad and grieving the loss of your old self and just the two of you, but you can also be super grateful to have this new baby in your life. And I think sometimes, when you talk about the quote unquote ugly truths of motherhood, people start shaming you of like, but you're so lucky to have it. But it's not one or the other. It's really both, and multiple emotions do exist. And I think we really need to embrace that as a whole, as a society.
Absolutely.
For sure. And, so you go back to work after you start at like 3 months, you're going back 3 days a week. Did you experience any guilt with going back to work? Did you experience emotions of like, there's a part of me that does want to do this? It's hard because as a mom, we're kind of feel guilty either way. But did you experience this new perspective when you went back to work? Like, oh, this is taking away time with my son.
Yeah, I've definitely felt waves up and down emotions of how I want to approach going back to work or how it feels to go back. I think it's another example of having multiple emotions at once, because simultaneously I felt such a strong burst of energy to go back to work, and so much, especially after a few months of not working and not doing any partnerships, I feel like I came back in hot and was like, I'm feeling extremely entrepreneurial. I want to get back into creating and doing my job to the best of my ability. So there was like a part of me that felt like having a baby made me more inspired to work more. But I think the hardest part was, yes, I did feel some glimpses, and I have over the course, specifically when he was like under 1, maybe even up to 2, I felt some moments of, what do I want to do with my life? Should I just be a stay-at-home mom? Should I work part-time? Should I work full-time? I even made that like viral TikTok video where I'm fighting myself. Yeah. And that video was kind of an over-exaggeration, because the version of me that was a stay-at-home mom, it was like a ballerina farm life where I'm making homemade Cheez-Its and gardening. So I don't think I'd go that far, but there have been parts of me that, especially as I moved to the suburbs and a lot of the moms around me now don't work at all, it is tempting to just be like, like that seems a little easier than trying to balance things. I'm not saying it's easy to be a stay-at-home mom, but it just seems like picking a lane is maybe a little easier. I think the harder part, though, was once we got childcare and we had a nanny in the city, it takes a lot of letting go. It kind of goes back to the accepting help thing. We pay for this nanny to come in the city, and I still become, maybe it's my personality, maybe it's because I'm the mom, I don't know, but like I'm still the default person who is kind of responsible for figuring out what is going on with the nanny and him. So Michael can kind of like go to work and close the door, and I'm the one who's texting with the nanny while she's out with him, telling her like what time he needs to be home, what I want her to feed him that day. She's asking me, is it okay if I take him here? Is it okay if I take him there? So I'm really never totally unplugged. If I had an event to attend or was recording a podcast or something and I was going to be offline, it needs to be like announced to the house that I'm not there and Michael is the one on for this moment. Aside from that, it's like it just naturally falls, at least in our case, on the mom to be the one who's liaising with the childcare. So even though I'm not doing the childcare, I'm still thinking about it throughout all hours of the day.
Yeah, it goes to the whole like mental load that moms just end up by carrying. And I know you've talked about this before, but with that mental load comes resentment. And Michael seems like a very present father, and he's very supportive to you. And it does seem like you have a really balanced, beautiful relationship. But I think even when you have that, the resentment just creeps in, because of this mental load that we have to carry. And your breastfeeding journey, another prime example, you're kind of like tied to this chair. And unfortunately, men can't kind of take that away from us. And with the nanny, with the preschool, like you will always be the person to call. And no matter how much they do, it still feels like we have this load on us that will not go away.
Yes. And I mean, he is, as far as partners go, like just from what I can observe in the world, he is as 50-50 of a parent as I think they come, in that, we both, because of the way our lives are set up, where we both work from home and we both have our own full-time jobs, we really do split other parenting responsibilities, as many loads as possible in terms of mental things to think about, whether it's like, we need new clothes for Milo, or we need to sign him up for these programs, driving him places, planning for things. We really do split. We also very much split household responsibilities in a way that I don't think a lot of other couples do. Everything from doing the laundry to, putting dishes in the dishwasher, everything is split really well. I think it's more so the place that I can't seem to wrap my head around, whether it's because I'm the woman or because of my job, which is so much more flexible. It ends up on my shoulders, some of those like day to day in the middle of the day, if something comes up, I need to flex because I have a more flexible job.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell, like if I worked in a corporate environment and we both had a boss that we had to report to, would we kind of deal with those day to day things that pop up differently? For example, a nanny calling in sick, or I just got a call a couple of weeks ago that Milo stuck a bead up his nose at camp and Michael was on a call that I said, fuck the call. And I ran in and interrupted him. And I said, we have to go to camp to pick him up. And I need you to come with me. But those types of things that the school calls me, and I was just about to record a podcast and just said, I have to scrap this and put this on hold because I have to go attend to this. And sometimes I can't tell if it's just like a mother thing or the flexible job thing. And I guess I really will never know.
I feel like we're both in that same position. And yeah, it's even in the very early days, again, when you're like breastfeeding and you're doing all the things, like they have the ability to just go. I remember he was like, I'm going to go to the market. I'm like, well, I can't just go to the market because I got to feed in 20 minutes. And it's just this, I guess, freedom that even if they are 50-50 involved and taking on so much of the physical load and the responsibilities, they have typically more freedom, and they don't have to always announce their departure and 2 weeks in advance. And, like my husband will say, I have a work event tonight. Whereas, we have their events like in 1 month, I have, this is happening. We need to. So it is definitely, I think, something that it can cause resentment for sure. Even if our husbands are doing all they can and all that stuff, it's just this like limiting this freedom that I think comes with motherhood.
I've actually heard a lot of moms, I think the term is weaponized incompetence, where like what will happen is from the start, the mom will take control because she has a way she wants things done and she feels she could do it best. So she'll take control and then kind of tell the husband, I've got it. And then later in life, when she asks him to do things, he'll be like, but you're so much better at that because, you do that better than me. And it becomes, that's why all the weight is on her shoulders. And one way that we've sort of avoided having any of that in our household at all is, which is kind of, it's annoying to say it's like contingent on the wife or the mom, but from the very start of Milo's life, I knew going into having a baby that I didn't want to say I could do this better. Even if I could do something better or I knew how to do it better, he needs to learn how to do it and I need to let him do it and not be hovering over his shoulder and telling him you strapped the diaper wrong or that outfit doesn't match. He has to do things himself and I need to be okay with it because it's only going to help me. I want to be able to, in 3 months, go on a girls' trip and leave without writing out instructions and without feeling any sense of stress that I'm leaving you in a situation you don't know how to handle. And I have to say, having that mindset from the start was a game changer because I did go on a mom's trip to Mexico, like, I don't know, 9 months postpartum or 10 months or something, and left without a drop of guilt or worry that he was going to know what to do.
Yeah, I think it's harder sometimes to put it in practice because I also got that same type of advice. And so I'll be like, what did you give her for breakfast? And then he says like something with like 0 protein, 0 nutrients or anything. And I'm just like, breathe. Or I'm like, can you dress her for the birthday party? And she's wearing like sweatpants. But it's one of those things, as you said, you just need to like let go, let them do their thing. They're safe, they're healthy. It's not anything bad. It's more of like their style. And once you start to accept their style and to stop kind of like overstepping, that's when you have this like true partner who you can depend on for everything and go to the girls' trip.
Yep. I mean, who cares? She wears sweatpants to the party.
Yeah,
that's fine.
It's chic now,
And how is your, like from a business perspective, you've really changed your content from, the early days of doing the 5 days of eating pizza to really getting open about money, sex, mental health. Like, what led you to discussing more taboo topics, and how has that kind of felt for you to kind of be more exposed online than you previously were?
I think in my refinery days, my audience was so young, and I was also in my, mid 20s, and felt like the content I was creating videos about was really what was top of mind for me in my life and the things I would talk about with my friends. And then my audience has really watched me transition from being in my early 20s or mid 20s to getting engaged, getting married, moving to the suburb, moving multiple times, then buying a house, moving to the suburbs, having kids, and now a second kid. And I think that I've just transformed so much as a person that the type of videos I was making at Refinery don't appeal to me anymore. I don't think I would even watch a video of someone doing a 5-day of sleeping on the floor challenge anymore, because I have other fish to fry, not bigger fish, but just other fish. And as my interests have changed in terms of what I'm watching and who I am and who I'm noticing I'm becoming as I talk to my friends, I was just really wanting my own platforms and the type of content I'm creating to reflect that. And I remember thinking about a podcast for a long time before I started it, and not being sure that I would have the bandwidth for it, specifically making a weekly YouTube video or even a bi-weekly YouTube video. Like, how would I have time to do a podcast too? And it took me a long time before I came to grips with the fact that I am listening to more podcasts than I am watching YouTube videos. And I want to be spending my time making the stuff that I'm actually consuming. So when I finally got the itch to do the podcast, I was thinking of what I wanted to make it about. And I guess I just really wanted to pick a topic that was something that I, at this moment in my life, would want to listen to in terms of a format. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of different therapy podcasts where it's real people coming on with a therapist. I listen to this really great money podcast where couples come on and share all the details of their finances, and this money coach helps them. And I love the taboo topics, diving into topics with experts where you're kind of learning. And I realize I'm not an expert money coach. I'm not an expert therapist. I can't fill any of those roles, but these are the types of conversations I love having with my friends and the people in my life. And not everyone gets to have these conversations because the topics are so hush hush. So why not just have these conversations in a platform that's public where you don't need an expert? It's just two people talking and getting real. And that's where the real stuff came from. It really was just born out of what I wanted to hear and what I thought people would find intriguing. And I chose the 3 topics that I find to be the most taboo topics that people really want to know about, but have a hard time talking about, and came up with this idea of just having conversations that are a little bit uncomfortable, but that leave people feeling like they've A, gotten new information out of it, and B, are not alone with whatever private thoughts they're having.
Yeah, that's really refreshing and it's so needed. I love hearing so much, especially as it relates to the money side. But I also think, as we become moms, we really know, I don't know, I noticed that you really cut the bullshit. You don't want to have surface level conversations. You don't want to have a podcast about non-meaningful things. You really want to be direct and not the banter, and just kind of go into it. So I feel like it makes sense that with this motherhood part of you, you kind of these are the topics I'm focusing on, and you're going to be very direct about them. I think it's so important. I wish you had this platform when I was in my 20s talking about money, because hearing people's salaries and being open about that is so important. I don't know why, as a society, maybe. I think it's really also in the US, we're just very shy to talk about money. And I think if more people talked about it and we normalized it, we would just feel so much more comfortable in ourselves too. And I think once you have a kid, money becomes more of a topic, right? You birth this human who is incredibly expensive. And How did you deal with that with your husband? Like, how did you set, okay, we're creating a shared account and any expenses for babies come out of here? Like, that's something I would love to hear, because honestly, I'm still figuring out how that happens. But there's just so many expenses, like the products and the classes and the preschool, like it's just constant. So I would love to hear kind of like how you handle that.
Yeah, well, first of all, with the money topic, people from my platform already know, but in maybe 2018, 2017, I was a guest on Fox News, and the host asked me on live TV what I was making, like what my salary was as an influencer. And I was so uncomfortable. And I remember getting all hot and flustered, and my face got bright red. And I kind of gave him this really vague answer about how, like, if you have the right team around you, it could be lucrative, but I did not want to give him any sort of figure. And then fast forward, the way that I kind of decided to open up about this money stuff more from a personal standpoint, not just hosting the podcast, was I posted the question box on my story of asking people to tell me their salaries. And I got, hundreds of people writing in, thousands of people telling me, here's my age, here's my location, here's the field I work in, and here's my income. But I had so many messages within that question box of people saying, well, if we're going to tell you our salary, you better tell us yours. And I was like, shit, I had no intention of sharing anything about my figures on this, especially because when I'm resharing all of your stuff, it's anonymous, but mine has my name attached to it. So like everyone else got to be anonymous. But I don't know. I thought about it for like a couple days, and I was like, you know what? If I'm going to host a podcast where I bring on creators, because in that case, it's not anonymous, I bring on creators or guests and I'm asking them to tell me numbers. Who am I to ask them to tell me that if I haven't even shared it myself? Like, how long can I sustain being the host of this show? It's like imposter syndrome. So I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I'm just going to open up about one of the earliest episodes of the podcast is called like every salary I've ever made in the media world. And it goes all the way from my first job out of college to my business now and how much revenue it's bringing in and all the different sources. And it was one of the most listened to episodes. I think it set the show up really well to now allow me to ask questions like I ask. But on that note, the question you asked about my husband and I doing it for a kid, Michael is very much the logistical brains in our house, in that whether it's because he's naturally like financially savvy or because he used to work in finance and he's just really good at spreadsheets and databases, he's become the person who's tracking everything, in that he's built this robust family spreadsheet for us that pulls together all the line items of all the different sources of income that we have, whether it's his business or, his job, my business, any investments that either of us like came into our marriage with, any joint investments that we now have. Now our house is on that, any debts like cars, leases on cars, everything's on this spreadsheet, and he updates it quarterly, like as if it's part of his job. He goes in quarterly and he logs into every account and writes what the new number is and has a bottom line number that shows what our family's overall wealth is at the end of each quarter. And we've watched that number grow over the past few years of being, we've been married this is our 5th year together. From the moment we got married, we basically joined everything in terms of considering everything to be joint, even though we didn't technically I didn't close down my personal checking account or anything. But I have an episode of the podcast coming out about this. It's with audience callers where I bring on different people who talk about whether they keep things separate in their marriage or not. We chose to just combine everything, and he updates this spreadsheet regularly. And we actually have like a quarterly, nightly meeting where we'll sit and he'll show me everything. And what was really an exciting thing that we saw on there was the year that we bought our house and then put in even more of our own money to renovate a lot of the house, because of the way my business was performing in that year and the amount of money that he had moved into different investments. we actually had a more profitable year than a green year versus a red year, even in a year when we like spent more than we had ever spent. And so he keeps me abreast of those numbers and like those figures. And I feel like that's kind of the way we're doing with, same thing in the spreadsheet. We have a line item for our son's like childcare costs. He now has a full-time nanny. He goes to a school program, camp program, any other activities we send him to, like everything's on this sheet. And it's just a good way to kind of map out what's coming up. And especially with a second baby, we can add in the applicable costs and just project what's going to be coming.
That's great. Very helpful. You seem like you have a very good, like abundant relationship with money. Have you always had that?
Absolutely not. I think not to like, I hate to throw mindsets on other people because I don't know if they would agree with it, but I think my upbringing with money felt a lot closer to a scarcity mindset with money, just in that, my family was from a very well-off suburban town, but my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked in the radio industry, and like a lot of the other parents around us were lawyers or finance people or, doctors. And I know for a fact that my family, like in terms of the scale of where we were from, was on kind of the lower end of the town that we were from. But I never thought about that or felt like nothing in my upbringing made me feel like that. It was more so that my parents really drilled into me and my siblings the importance of making money and like holding on to money. And I remember my parents telling me just how hard it was to make money and how hard you have to work to make money. And I'm not saying they're not right, but like they definitely drilled into me that it's difficult to get money. And once you get it, you have to hold on to it. They had a very save mentality. And that's just sort of what I had and kind of naturally have because of that background. But going into the working world and kind of going off on my own and building my own business, I've now had so many different, I don't know if it's like things that have happened in my business or just different experiences on my own that have disproven that mindset. For example, like there have been times now in my business where I've said no to large sums of money because of one reason or another. Like something that if I like ran by my parents, what do you think I should do with this? They would say, of course, take the money and run. And I would be like, no, I don't, I just doesn't feel right for this reason or that reason, or it's not the brand isn't in alignment. And I've said no. And it's been hard to do internally. Like I feel like I'm making the wrong choice. And then 2 weeks later, something bigger and better comes around that feels right. And I'm like, thank God I listened to myself. And I've just been proven time and time again that the mindset I have about money, which is that I know how to make it. I can always find out another way to make it. It's always coming as long as I'm like enjoying what I'm doing and continuing to work hard. There's always more money to be made. There's not like a shortage of money in the world. And I have skills that I can provide to people and know how to make it in a variety of ways. And it's like not hard to make and it's not hard to hold on to. And I'm smart with what I do with it once I get it. I just feel like having that mindset leads to more and more of it.
That is honestly the best answer to this question
truthfully.
ever. It also channeled, like, I don't know if you've done Lucie Phillips, the To Be Magnetic work at all. But
No.
So it's this manifestation course, and she talks about how things come into your life as tests. And when you say no to the test, there's more abundance on the other side. So for example, you getting a partnership that didn't feel authentic, you saying no, and then more abundance comes on the other side. So excellent answer.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. We've been both doing the course, and whether it's money or love or a career advancement, the manifestation is it's all the same mindset of living in this abundance versus fear and scarcity. And I think our generation, and especially our parents' generation, they were taught scarcity and saving and don't overspend. And obviously there's another extreme to that where you definitely don't want to be, just freely spending. But if you're smart with your money and you're intentional, there is a lot of room for you to be like, hey, there's more out there for me. It's available to me and I am deserving of it and I'm not scared of it and have a healthy relationship with it.
There's also like a lot of things in my personal adult life that I spend on because they're like conveniences for me or luxuries for me, whether it's, I actually pay for a monthly blow dry package at this place near me because I just really don't like washing my own hair. And I could go like a week without washing it. So I pay for this 4-time a month blowout package. And it's actually really helpful for my job. So once a week I'll go in. If I need to wash my hair in between, I'll wash it at home. But pretty much once a week I get a blow dry. And then it's like, looks good for 3 to 4 to 5 days in the week, which can usually be my work shoot days.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes like it's a convenience for me. I enjoy it. I love getting a head massage when I'm lying in the chair. And it's like, I've chosen to put a fraction of what I'm making towards that. Anytime I talk about this blowout package with my mom or like people from my family, it comes across to them as a waste. Like, you could do that yourself. You could do it better yourself. Like, I just showed my mom this new hair tool I got at home and she's like, cancel your blowout package. You don't need it. You're good at doing it with this. But it's like, I don't sit here and think what a waste that is.
Mm-hmm.
I think of it as, I'm making that money back and more doing other work I love. So if this is a convenience for me, like, I want to spend on this, and it doesn't feel bad at all to put my credit card down and spend on things that are joyful to me.
Yeah.
And it can help you show up better too when you feel good. Like,
and also like it shows that you value your time. Like, I don't want to spend an hour doing my hair when I could do my hair and then do all my emails on my phone while I'm doing it and then be able to spend more time with my daughter after. So I think the time and money also goes hand in hand. Like, how much do you think an hour of your time is worth? If it's worth more than a blowout, then get the damn blowout.
Exactly. And I just love being able to make, like, that helps me feel like an adult, is being able to make those decisions for myself and not have someone be like, that's a bad use of your money, because it's my money. Like, if I was still using my mom's credit card and she didn't want me to do that, I would understand it. But when it's your money and you're the adult, it's like, you have this power to put your credit card down for things that are important to you. And I don't spend frivolously in areas that are unimportant to me. I only spend on the things that are actually useful for me and bring me joy.
And when it comes from the right place of, I'm doing it for me, not just because everyone around me is doing it and I have to keep up. It's because, this is something that helps me. And especially as a mom, time is everything. Every hour counts. We try to maximize the hours in the day. If we have childcare, like, what am I going to do with my time? So yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to that. So, well, this was an amazing conversation, and we have absolutely loved having you on. Where can everyone find you on social, your podcast?
Thank you guys for having me. This was great. I love that we're all going to become mom times 2 very soon. So everyone can find me on my own social platforms, which is Lucie B. Fink, spelled Lucie BFINK. That's on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And then the podcast is called The Real Stuff, and you can listen on Apple, Spotify, or also on my YouTube channel.
Amazing. And I can't wait for that new episode to come out.
Yes, on the money.
So many good audience caller episodes coming up. We have one coming up about gender disappointment where we had people write in.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, we should call in. Yeah, we got to call in. Thank you so much, Lucie. Good luck with the rest of your pregnancy. And we're so excited to watch your journey on Mom Times 2.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.